The summer I turned 24, I thought I had life figured out. I was crashing at my best friend Tommy's place in the suburbs, working a dead-end barista job while I tried to piece together what I wanted to do with my degree. Tommy's house was a safe haven, sprawling, a little messy, with a backyard that smelled like cut grass and charcoal from weekend barbecues. His dad, Jerry, was always around, this quiet force in the background, grilling burgers or tinkering with his old Chevy in the garage. I'd known him since I was a kid, back when he was just Tommy's dad, the guy who'd toss us a football or sneak us extra cookies when Tommy's mom wasn't looking. But that summer, something shifted. I started noticing him, really noticing him, and it scared the hell out of me. Jerry was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered with a face that carried stories he never told. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his eyes, this deep hazel, had a way of looking at you like they saw more than you meant to show. He wasn't loud or flashy like some of the guys I'd crushed on before. He was steady, grounded, the kind of person who made you feel like everything was going to be okay just by being in the room. I'd catch myself watching him when he wasn't looking, how his hands moved when he fixed something, how his laugh rumbled low when Tommy cracked a dumb joke. It was stupid, I told myself. He was my best friend's dad, off limits in every way that mattered. That summer, Tommy was working night shifts at a warehouse, so I was alone in the house with Jerry most evenings. We'd end up in the living room, him with a beer, me with a soda, watching old action movies or baseball games. He'd talk about his job at the auto shop, about cars he'd fixed, or customers who drove him up the wall. I'd ramble about college, my professors, or how I was pretty sure I was screwing up my future. He listened, really listened, in a way that made me feel like my words weren't just noise. Sometimes our conversations stretched late into the night, the TV forgotten, just the two of us talking about nothing and everything. One night in July, everything changed. It was one of those sticky, humid evenings where the air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on you. Tommy was at work, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the AC and the distant chirp of crickets outside. Jerry was in the kitchen, washing dishes from dinner. Some lasagna he'd made that was honestly better than anything I'd eaten in weeks. I was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the way my heart sped up every time he walked by. "Hey, kid," he called from the kitchen, his voice warm, teasing. He always called me that, even though I was far from a kid now. "You gonna help me with these dishes, or just sit there looking pretty?" I laughed, rolling my eyes, and got up to join him. The kitchen was small, cozy, with yellow light spilling from the overhead fixture. Jerry handed me a towel to dry the plates, and we fell into an easy rhythm. Him washing, me drying, our elbows brushing every now and then. It was normal, domestic, but every touch sent a jolt through me I couldn't explain. I kept my eyes on the plates, scared he'd see something in my face I wasn't ready to name. "You're quiet tonight," he said after a while, glancing at me as he scrubbed a pan. His voice was soft, not pushing, just noticing. I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just tired, I guess. Long day at the coffee shop." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me, like he knew there was more I wasn't saying. That was the thing about Jerry. He always seemed to know. We finished the dishes, and he grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, handing me one without asking if I wanted it. I took it, grateful for something to hold on to, something to distract me from the way my pulse was racing. We ended up on the back porch, sitting on the steps, the night air thick with the scent of jasmine from the neighbor's yard. The stars were out, faint against the glow of the city in the distance. Jerry leaned back, his shoulder close to mine, and we sipped our beers in silence for a while. It wasn't awkward, but it was heavy, like we were both waiting for something to happen. "You ever feel like you're stuck?" he asked suddenly, his voice low, almost like he was talking to himself. "Like you're living the life you're supposed to, but it's not. Enough?" I turned to look at him, surprised. Jerry didn't talk like this, not usually. He was the guy who fixed things, who kept everything together. Seeing him vulnerable, even for a second, felt like peeking behind a curtain. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight, all the time, like I'm just going through the motions, waiting for something to click. He nodded, staring out at the yard. I've been feeling that a lot lately, like I missed something along the way. Like maybe I've been too scared to go after what I really want. His words hit me hard because they echoed something I'd been wrestling with for months. I'd known I was gay since I was a teenager sanding, but I'd never told anyone. Not Tommy, not my parents. It was my secret, locked up tight, and it made me feel like I was living half a life. Sitting there with Jerry, I felt it bubbling up, the urge to spill it all, to tell him everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. "What do you want, Jerry?" I asked instead, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me then, his eyes dark and searching. For a moment I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, "I don't know, but I think I'm starting to figure it out." My heart stopped. There was something in his voice, something raw and unguarded, that made my skin prickle. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the words stuck in my throat. The air between us felt charged, like a storm was about to break. He set his beer down on the step and turned to face me fully. "You ever feel like you're hiding something from the world?" he asked. "Something big? Something that could change everything?" I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "Yeah, I do." He leaned closer, just a fraction, but it was enough to make my breath catch. "What are you hiding, kid?" I could have lied. I could have laughed it off, changed the subject, but his eyes were locked on mine, and I felt like he could see right through me. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Jerry," I said, my voice shaking, "I don't know if I can say it." He didn't push. He just waited, his gaze steady, like he had all the time in the world. And maybe it was the beer, or the heat, or the way he was looking at me, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I'm gay," I blurted out. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and it felt like a weight I'd been carrying forever just fell off my shoulders. But it also terrified me, because Jerry was Tommy's dad, and what if I just ruined everything? He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached out and put his hand on my knee. It wasn't a big gesture, but it felt like the world tilted. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice low and steady. "That takes guts." I let out a shaky laugh, my eyes stinging. "I don't know if it's guts or stupidity. I couldn't keep it in anymore. Not with you." His thumb moved slightly, rubbing a small circle on my knee, and my whole body felt like it was on fire. "You don't have to hide with me," he said. "Ever." I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was me, maybe it was him, but suddenly we were closer, our faces inches apart. His breath was warm, smelling faintly of beer, and his eyes were searching mine, like he was looking for permission. My heart was racing, my mind screaming at me to stop, to think about Tommy, about how wrong this was. But my body didn't listen. When our lips met, it wasn't like anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't just a kiss. It was like a dam breaking, years of wanting and hiding pouring out all at once. His hand cupped the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, my hands gripping his shirt like I was afraid he'd disappear. It wasn't rough or desperate. It was soft, careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then reality crashed in. I pulled back, my chest heaving, my mind spinning. "Jerry, we can't," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Tommy, this is wrong." He didn't let go of me right away. His hand stayed on my neck, his thumb brushing my jaw. "I know," he said, his voice rough. "I know, but I've been fighting this for a long time, and I'm tired of it." I stared at him, my heart splitting in two. "What are you saying?" He let out a long breath, his hand dropping to his lap. "I'm saying I've been lying to myself for years about who I am, about what I want, and I'm done pretending." I couldn't breathe. "Jerry, are you saying you're gay?" He gave a small, bitter smile. "Yeah, took me a long time to admit it, even to myself, but sitting here with you, it's like I can't hide it anymore." I felt like I was falling, like the ground had disappeared beneath me. All this time, I thought I was alone in this, carrying this secret that could ruin everything. But Jerry, he was carrying it too. And now we'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. We sat there in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling between us. I wanted to kiss him again, to tell him I didn't care about the consequences, but I couldn't. Not yet. Tommy's face kept flashing in my mind, and the guilt was like a knife in my chest. "I should go," I said finally, standing up on shaky legs. I need to think." Jerry didn't stop me. He just nodded, his eyes full of something I couldn't name, regret, maybe, or hope. "I'm here," he said. "When you're ready." I stumbled back into the house, my heart pounding, my mind a mess. I didn't sleep that night. All I could think about was Jerry, his touch, his words, the way he'd looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. And as the sun came up, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days after that night on the porch were a blur, like I was walking through a fog I couldn't shake. I'd wake up every morning with my stomach in knots, replaying the kiss in my head, Jerry's lips, the warmth of his hand on my neck, the way his voice cracked when he admitted he'd been hiding too. It felt like a dream, but the guilt was real, sharp, cutting into me every time I saw Tommy's face. He was my best friend, the guy who'd been there through every breakup, every late-night panic about my future. And now I was keeping this massive secret from him, one that could blow up his whole world. I avoided Jerry for a couple of days. It wasn't hard. Tommy's house was big enough, and I could make excuses about work or errands. But every time I passed the kitchen or heard the creak of the garage door, my heart would lurch, half hoping I'd run into him, half terrified I would. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to face him after what happened. Was it a mistake? A moment of weakness? Or was it something real, something we'd both been circling around for longer than either of us wanted to admit? By Wednesday, I couldn't dodge him anymore. Tommy was at work again, and I was in the living room, pretending to read some book I'd picked up from the coffee table. Really, I was just staring at the same page, my mind racing. The back door opened, and Jerry walked in, wiping his hands on a rag. He'd been working on his Chevy, and there was a smudge of grease on his forearm. His flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. He looked at me, and for a second, it was like the air got sucked out of the room. "Hey," he said, his voice careful like he was testing the waters. "You've been scarce." I set the book down, my hands shaky. "Yeah, just busy, you know?" He nodded, but his eyes didn't buy it. He tossed the rag onto the counter and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "We need to talk about the other night." My stomach dropped. I wanted to bolt, to make some excuse and run, but his gaze pinned me in place. "I don't know what to say, Jerry," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm freaking out." He let out a slow breath and ran a hand through his hair, the gray strands catching the light. "Me too. But I don't regret it. Do you?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Did I? The kiss had felt like the truest thing I'd ever done, like I'd been holding my breath my whole life and finally let it out. But the fallout, Tommy, the betrayal, the mess it could make, it was too much to untangle. "I don't know," I said finally. "It felt right. But it's not that simple." "No, it's not," he agreed, his voice soft but steady. "I've spent years telling myself I could keep this part of me locked up, for Tommy, for his mom, for the life I was supposed to have. But then you came along, and—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "You make it hard to keep pretending." His words hit me like a punch. I stood up, needing to move, to do something with the energy buzzing under my skin. "Jerry, you're Tommy's dad. If he finds out, it'll destroy him. And I can't be the guy who does that to him." Jerry's face tightened, and for a moment I saw the weight he was carrying, the years of hiding who he was. "I know," he said. "I've thought about that every damn day since you started staying here. But I can't stop feeling what I feel. And I don't think you can either." He was right, and I hated it. I wanted to tell him to forget it, to go back to how things were, but the thought of pretending nothing happened felt like a lie I couldn't live with. I took a step toward him, then stopped, my hands clenched at my sides. What do we do then? Just act like nothing's changed? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room, closing the distance between us. He didn't touch me, but he was close enough that I could smell the faint scent of motor oil and soap on him. I don't know, he said, but I know I don't want to lose this, whatever it is we've got going, not without giving it a chance. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might break my ribs. I wanted to reach for him, to feel the solid warmth of him again, but the fear was louder. And Tommy? I asked, my voice cracking. Jerry's jaw tightened, and he looked away, out the window at the darkening yard. He's my son. I'd do anything for him, but I've spent my whole life putting everyone else first, and I'm tired, kid. I'm tired of not being honest with myself. I didn't know what to say to that. The room felt too small. Yeah, it's all, the air too thick. Before I could find the words, the front door slammed open, and Tommy's voice echoed through the house. Yo, anybody home? I froze, my heart in my throat. Jerry stepped back, his expression shifting to something neutral, like he was flipping a switch. In here, he called, his voice steady like nothing had happened. Tommy bounded into the kitchen, his work boots loud on the hardwood. He was all grins, oblivious to the tension in the room. Man, work was brutal. You guys eat yet? I'm starving. I forced a smile, my stomach churning. Not yet. You want me to order pizza? Hell yeah, Tommy said, already pulling out his phone. Pepperoni and extra cheese, right? As he wandered off to the living room, still talking, I caught Jerry's eye. There was a question there, unspoken but heavy. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The next few weeks were a tightrope walk. Jerry and I didn't talk about the kiss again, but it was there in every glance, every brush of our hands when we passed each other in the hall. We were careful, too careful, like we were both afraid of what might happen if we got too close again. But the pull was stronger than I expected. I'd find excuses to be near him, helping with dinner, offering to grab tools from the garage, anything to feel that spark again, even if it scared me. Tommy didn't notice a thing, thank God. He was too caught up in his own world, work, his new girlfriend, the fantasy football league he was obsessed with. But the guilt was eating me alive. Every time he laughed or slung an arm around me, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. I started pulling away, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to be around him without feeling like a traitor. One night, about a month after the kiss, I couldn't sleep. It was past midnight, and the house was quiet, Tommy snoring in his room down the hall. I slipped out to the porch, needing air, needing to clear my head. The stars were out again, brighter this time, and the air was cooler, carrying the first hint of fall. I was sitting on the steps, my knees pulled up, when the door creaked behind me. Couldn't sleep either? Jerry's voice was low, careful not to break the stillness of the night. I glanced over my shoulder, my pulse already picking up. Yeah, too much going on in my head. He sat down next to me, leaving a careful distance between us. He was in a worn t-shirt and jeans, his hair a little messy, like he'd been tossing and turning too. You've been pulling away, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. From me, from Tommy. I swallowed hard, staring at my hands. I don't know how to do this, Jerry. I don't know how to be around you without wanting more, and I don't know how to be around Tommy without hating myself. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, I've been where you are, hating yourself for wanting something you're not supposed to. It's a hell of a place to live. I looked at him, my chest tight. How did you deal with it? All those years? He gave a small, sad smile. I didn't, not really. I got married, had Tommy, built a life I thought I was supposed to want. But it was like living in a house with no windows. You get used to it, but it's not living. Not really. His words cut deep because I knew exactly what he meant. I'd been hiding for so long, pretending to be someone I wasn't, and it was exhausting. But sitting there with Jerry, I felt seen, like he understood parts of me I'd never shown anyone else. "I don't want to hurt Tommy," I said, my voice breaking, "but I don't want to lose this either, whatever this is." Jerry reached out then, his hand resting on mine. His touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment I let myself lean into it. "We'll figure it out," he said, "together. But we've got to be honest, with each other at least. No more hiding." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. His hand squeezed mine, and we sat there in the dark, the world quiet except for the crickets and the faint rustle of leaves. It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it was a promise. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The rest of the summer was a balancing act. Jerry and I stole moments when we could, a brush of hands in the kitchen, a quiet conversation on the porch after Tommy went to bed. We didn't kiss again, not yet, but the tension was there, electric and undeniable. Every time we were alone, it felt like we were standing on the edge of something big, something that could either save us or ruin everything. Tommy started to notice something was off, though. He'd catch me staring into space or dodging his questions about why I was so quiet. "You good, man?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed. "You've been weird lately." I'd lie, say it was work or stress, but the words tasted bitter. I hated lying to him, hated the way it made me feel like I was betraying him twice. Once for what I felt for Jerry, and once for keeping it from him. But telling him wasn't an option, not yet. I didn't even know what I'd say, how I'd explain something I barely understood myself. By the end of August, things came to a head. Tommy's girlfriend was throwing a big barbecue at her place, and he insisted I come along. Jerry was going too, and the thought of being in a crowd with both of them made my stomach churn. I tried to beg off, but Tommy wouldn't hear it. "Come on, it'll be fun," he said, slinging an arm around me. "You need to get out of your head." The barbecue was loud, chaotic, with music blaring and people spilling across the backyard. I stuck close to Tommy at first, nursing a soda and trying to act normal. But every time I caught sight of Jerry, laughing with some of Tommy's coworkers, his sleeves rolled up, his eyes crinkling at the corners, I felt that pull again, stronger than ever. Late in the evening, I slipped away to the edge of the yard, needing a break from the noise. I was leaning against a tree, staring up at the sky, when Jerry found me so. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the party. I nodded, but it was a lie, and he knew it. He stepped closer, his shoulder brushing mine, and for a moment we just stood there, the world fading around us. "I hate this," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "Pretending, hiding, it's killing me." He didn't say anything, but his hand found mine, hidden in the shadows of the tree, his fingers laced through mine, and it was like a lifeline, something solid in the middle of all the chaos. "We'll find a way," he said, his voice steady. "I don't know how yet, but we will." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could have this, whatever it was, without breaking everything else. But as I looked back at the party, at Tommy laughing with his girlfriend, oblivious to the storm brewing between his dad and his best friend, I wasn't so sure. September rolled in, and with it came a chill that settled into the bones of Tommy's house. The summer was gone, and so was the haze I'd been living in since that night on the porch with Jerry. Every day felt like a choice I wasn't ready to make: stay quiet and keep the peace, or risk everything for something I couldn't even name yet. Jerry and I were still circling each other, careful but drawn together like magnets. A glance across the kitchen, a hand brushing mine when Tommy wasn't looking. It was enough to keep my heart racing, but it wasn't enough to live on. I was a mess. Work at the coffee shop felt pointless, my shifts blurring into a cycle of fake smiles and burned espresso. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling in Tommy's guest room, wondering how I'd gotten here. I'd always thought coming out would be the hard part, but this, wanting Jerry, knowing what it could cost, was worse. Tommy was still clueless, Still the same goofy guy who'd share his last slice of pizza or stay up late debating which superhero could take down Batman. But I was pulling away, and I could tell he felt it, even if he didn't know why. One morning, about a week after the barbecue, Tommy cornered me in the kitchen. I was pouring coffee, still half asleep, when he leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. "All right, dude, what's up with you?" he asked, his voice sharp but worried. "You've been acting like a ghost for weeks. Did I do something?" My stomach twisted. "No, man, it's not you," I said, keeping my eyes on my mug. "Just stuff I'm dealing with." "What kind of stuff?" He wasn't letting it go, and I could feel his stare boring into me. "You're my best friend. If something's wrong, you can tell me." I wanted to laugh because he had no idea how impossible that was. Tell him what? That I was falling for his dad? That I'd kissed him? That we were both hiding secrets that could tear his family apart? "It's complicated," I mumbled, hating how weak it sounded. Tommy's jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he was going to push harder, but then he just shook his head. "Fine, but don't shut me out, okay? I'm here when you're ready." He grabbed his keys and headed out for work, leaving me standing there with my coffee going cold. The guilt was like a brick in my chest. I knew I couldn't keep this up much longer, lying to Tommy, sneaking around with Jerry, pretending I could outrun the truth. That night, Jerry and I finally talked. Really talked. Tommy was out with his girlfriend, and the house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of a clock in the hall. Jerry was in the garage, working on his Chevy, and I found myself wandering out there, drawn to him like always. He was under the hood, his hands black with grease, a frown creasing his face as he fiddled with something. The radio was playing some old rock song, low and scratchy, and the air smelled like oil and metal. "Hey," I said, leaning against the workbench. My voice sounded too loud in the small space. He glanced up, his hazel eyes catching the light. "Hey, kid." There was a softness in his voice, but also something heavy, like he knew why I was there. I took a deep breath, my hands shoved deep in my pockets. "We can't keep doing this, Jerry. The sneaking around, the secrets, it's tearing me apart." He straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag, and nodded slowly. "I know. I've been thinking the same thing." I waited, expecting him to say more, but he just looked at me, his face unreadable. It frustrated me how calm he seemed when I felt like I was falling apart. "So, what do we do?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "Because I can't keep lying to Tommy, and I can't keep pretending I don't—" I stopped, my throat closing up. "Pretending you don't what?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice was low, steady, but there was an edge to it like he was bracing himself. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "Pretending I don't want you, that I don't feel something for you, something big." His eyes softened, and for a moment he looked younger, like the weight he carried wasn't so heavy. He reached out, his hand hovering near my arm before he let it drop. "I feel it too," he said quietly. "Have for a long time. But you're right, this isn't fair to Tommy, or to us." I nodded, my chest tight. "So, what's the plan? We just stop? Go back to how things were?" He gave a small, bitter laugh. "I don't think we can go back, not after this." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about telling him, about me at least, that I'm gay. He deserves to know who his dad is." My heart stopped. "You're serious?" "Yeah," he said, his voice firm. "I've spent too long hiding. I don't want to do it anymore. And maybe if I'm honest with him, we can figure out what this means for us." Us. The word hung in the air, heavy and full of possibility. I wanted to believe it could work, that we could find a way to be together without breaking everything. But the thought of Tommy's reaction, his confusion, his hurt, made my stomach churn. "What if he hates us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jerry's face tightened, and I saw the fear there, the same fear I had been carrying. "He might," he admitted, "but I have to believe he'll come around. He's a good kid." "Oh." "He loves us both." I didn't know if I believed that, but I wanted to. I wanted to believe there was a world where Jerry and I could be together, where Tommy could understand, where we didn't have to hide. "When are you going to tell him?" I asked. "Soon," he said. "I need to find the right moment, but I'm done waiting for things to be perfect. They never are." We stood there in the garage, the radio humming in the background, and for the first time, I felt a spark of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Jerry reached for my hand, his fingers warm and rough, and I let him pull me closer. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line again, but the closeness was enough for now. It was a promise, a step toward something real. The next few days were tense, like we were all holding our breath. Jerry and I kept our distance, but the air between us was different now, less secretive, more determined. I started opening up to Tommy again, not about Jerry, but about myself. One night, over pizza and a bad sci-fi movie, I told him I was gay. It wasn't planned, the words just slipped out, raw and unpolished. He froze, his slice halfway to his mouth, and for a second, I thought I'd ruined everything. But then he set the pizza down and looked at me, his eyes searching. "For real?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice shaking. "I've known for a while, just didn't know how to say it." He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, I mean, it's a lot, but you're still you, right? Still my best friend?" I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Yeah, man, always." He grinned, a little awkward, but real. "Cool. Just don't start hitting on my girlfriend's brother or something, okay? He's a tool." I laughed, the tension breaking, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe around him. It wasn't the whole truth, not yet, but it was a start. Jerry told Tommy a week later. I wasn't there for it. He wanted to do it alone, just the two of them. I spent the evening at the coffee shop, pretending to read, but mostly staring at my phone, waiting for a text. When it finally came, "It's done. He's upset, but he'll be okay." I felt like I could cry. I didn't know the details, didn't know how Tommy had reacted or what he'd said, but Jerry's words gave me something to hold on to. When I got back to the house, Tommy was gone, staying at his girlfriend's for the night. Jerry was on the porch, a beer in his hand, staring out at the dark yard. He looked tired, older, but there was a lightness to him too, like he'd set down a burden he'd carried too long. "How'd it go?" I asked, sitting next to him. He sighed, taking a sip of his beer. "Not great. He was shocked, angry. Said he needed time to process it, but he didn't yell, didn't walk out. That's something." I nodded, my heart aching for both of them. "He'll come around," I said, echoing Jerry's words from the garage. "He loves you." Jerry gave me a small smile, his eyes soft. "I hope so. And you. You told him about you. That was brave." I shrugged, my face warm. Had to start somewhere. We sat in silence for a while, the night cool and quiet around us. Then Jerry reached for my hand, his fingers threading through mine. "I don't know what happens next," he said, "but I want to find out. With you." My heart swelled, and for the first time I let myself believe we could do this. Not right away, not without pain, but eventually. "Me too," I said, squeezing his hand. The next few weeks were rocky. Tommy was distant, spending more time with his girlfriend, processing things in his own way. But he didn't cut us off, didn't shut us out completely. He'd still text me dumb memes, still join us for dinner sometimes, even if the conversation was stilted. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Jerry and I took it slow. We didn't tell Tommy about us, not yet. He needed time to wrap his head around his dad being gay, around me being gay, before we dropped another bomb. But we were honest with each other. No more hiding, no more pretending. We'd steal moments when we could, a quiet walk in the park, a coffee run that lasted too long, our hands brushing as we talked about nothing and everything. By October, things started to settle. Tommy came over one night, just the three of us, and we watched a football game. The first time we'd all been in the same room, without it feeling like a minefield. He didn't ask about Jerry and me, didn't pry, but I caught him watching us sometimes, like he was putting pieces together. I didn't know if he'd ever be okay with it, but I hoped he'd at least understand someday. As for Jerry and me, we were finding our way. It wasn't easy. There were still doubts, still fears, still nights when I wondered if we were crazy for trying. But when he looked at me, his eyes warm and steady, I felt like we could face anything. We were building something real, something worth fighting for, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The future was uncertain, full of questions we couldn't answer yet. But sitting on that porch with Jerry, his hand in mine, I knew one thing for sure. We'd found our truth, and we weren't letting it go.